child everywhere.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest podcast of Grit and Grace, a Literacy Journey. I'm very excited because today's guest is Angela Cammarata, a very close friend of mine and a leading expert. She is a national literacy consultant for Zaner Bloser and the Super Kids Reading Program. Angela brings more than 20 years of experience in literacy education as a classroom teacher, literacy coach, school administrator, and state level education specialist. She is extremely passionate about helping schools bridge the gap between the science of reading and real classroom implementation, which is truly the heart of what we talk about here on Grit and Grace. So today we are diving into one of the most important systems that schools absolutely must get right: multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, as you have probably heard that called, and what it truly takes to build a responsive system that meets the needs of every single student. Welcome, Angie.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about this conversation today.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting to have you here. I love talking to you any day on a regular day. So it's
Sure.
really great to have you here for the podcast. So we're going to be talking about MTSS, building systems that truly respond to students. But before we dive in, if you will, Angie, please tell our listeners a little bit about your journey in education and also the work that you are now doing with Zaner Bloser and with Super Kids.
Sure. So my journey really started when I first started in the classroom. I was a first grade teacher for about 7 years. And as any first grade teacher knows, that's really where that love of literacy gets rooted. And that's such an important year for our kiddos, and really getting excited about reading, feeling that success, feeling that progress, and really feeling empowered. And so that kind of rooted my love of literacy there. And from there, I went on to get my first master's degree in literacy, just so that I can really hone in on making sure that the practices that I was using to support my kiddos was based in research and aligned with evidence, kind of all of that really important skill set that I think a lot of our classroom teachers have and need to have. And so as I was working through that, I had the opportunity to do some coaching and interventionist positions, which then sparked my curiosity for more of that systems approach. And what does that look like on the school-wide lens for implementing best practices and helping my teachers really hone in on the needs of their students. So I went back and got my second master's degree in educational leadership with a focus on instructional leadership. And so that really helped guide me towards a lot of my further roles working with on the state level, where I was working with a nonprofit in Nebraska that really took a look at early literacy. The state was just getting to the point of their READ Act, developing their READ Act. And so we did a lot of technical guides and things like that to really help teachers understand the importance of supporting our students, most specifically our students with dyslexia, and really digging into deep there. And so kind of led me through some different opportunities to where then I landed at Zaner Bloser, and then working with the Super Kids Reading Program. And we were kind of chatting earlier about how exciting of a role that is for me, that I get to actually help teachers implement really great high quality instructional materials, but while also helping to support them and honing that skill set so that they really see that program as a tool, and then really utilizing that to guide the progress of their students. So it's kind of where that all jumbled around and where I'm at today.
I love it. And you're so good at what you do. I've seen you in action. I got to know you through when we adopted Super Kids, when I was a building principal. And so you're great at what you do.
I appreciate
that. And you're welcome. You definitely have a passion for literacy. Like those of us that know you, you do not have to be around you very long before I mean, it's obvious that you have a passion for literacy, and you've worked in so many roles. I love the fact that you've been teacher, you've been coach, you've been administrator, and even the additional state level leader role.
Mhm.
What has helped keep you so passionate about literacy throughout all of that and also really improving outcomes for students?
I think what I love the most is building that capacity in our teachers. I
Yeah.
really, when I was continuing on in my career, I always wanted to choose my next role as something that I can make a larger impact on.
Yep.
So, in the first grade classroom, I'm making an impact on my kiddos. When I'm an interventionist, I'm making an impact on a lot of teachers' kiddos. And then, moving into the collegiate level where I was helping potential teachers really take a look at their own best practices in reading and teaching them those really basic foundational skills so that they could impact classrooms upon classrooms. So
Right.
really it was building that capacity in both our teachers and our administrators around once we get that skill set, the ease of use that it can be, and then how we look at data and how we analyze data and how we can really, as instructional leaders, break down that message so that it's bite sized for teachers to really easily implement without having a fear of the numbers. And so
Right.
I think that's really what fuels a lot of the passion I have for literacy is really just helping build that capacity in our teachers.
Love that.
Yeah.
That resonates with me so much because I say everyone said, "Why'd you leave one position?" I'm often asked, "Why did you leave one position to go to another one?"
Mhm.
Literally for one reason and one reason only. It was so that there would be the possibility of a greater impact
Yeah,
on a greater number of students. Yeah. I hear
absolutely.
that so often that that's why people then make the move.
Yeah.
So big picture question here because MTSS, my goodness, those four letters are thrown out a lot. We
Yeah.
hear that term a lot in education. So I want to say one more time for listeners, multi-tier system of support. But from
Hmm.
your perspective and from all the work you've done, what is MTSS really meant to accomplish in schools?
I think the goal of MTSS is really to make sure every student gets what they need when they need it, and um, that importance of catching things early. We want to make sure that we are always working in a proactive way to support our students, especially in early literacy. Starting off young in pre-K and kindergarten by
Yeah.
giving them those tools that they really need to then grow into proficient readers and writers, I think is extremely important. And what I love about MTSS is that it's a systems framework. It's not something that, teachers need to be afraid of. It really is just a way to logistically organize the way that we look at data, pull out the pieces that make sense, and then respond in a way that helps us know what to do next. And so, the more that we look into data, the more we understand where our kiddos are, and
Oh, true.
I think that's really an important piece when we're thinking about how we adjust our instruction and how we really look at what we can do. Most importantly, on that tier one level, I think that's also a big uh, landing piece for MTSS is really to help solidify the practices that are happening in our general ed classrooms so that we can be more targeted about what we do in those other tiers of support.
I laugh, I giggle. I was smiling from ear to ear when you said that because you and I have gone down a rabbit hole before and gotten lost in a conversation on just that,
Yeah,
just the tier one universal instruction. We could talk for our whole podcast just about that.
probably.
Yeah. So often, especially now that I'm doing the full-time consulting work, I see really that this is the area where so many schools struggle or feel that they're just not getting it right. I hate to say getting it wrong, but they just feel that they're not getting it right. I hear a lot of schools often say these phrases, Angie, we're doing MTSS, or, oh, we have MTSS,
Mhm.
but the systems that are in place aren't actually working. So, what do you think some of those most common misunderstandings are about MTSS?
I think a lot of times teachers might feel like MTS is something that's done to them,
Yeah.
that it's just an intervention or that it's more work for them to do, and not really understanding that it's actually relieving the amount of work that you need to do. Once you understand and aren't afraid of the data, once you can kind of see I think some of the biggest myths around MTS are that it's an intervention or that it's something that's being done to teachers as opposed to with teachers, which really can sometimes be a little bit scary. MTSS isn't an intervention, it's a way in which we look at data to then respond to figure out what we need to do next. And I think some of the myths around that are really it's about grouping students or placing them. Okay, so this kiddo I don't have to worry about anymore. We're going to put them in tier two instruction and they're going to get everything they need. Or, uh, looking at a way in which we are just kind of looking at the data and not really analyzing the data. So
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes when it comes to MTSS, we are not understanding the actual the purpose of it, and so that can be a little bit scary. And I think also having someone who can lead an MTSS as a way of looking at it in a collaborative way with our interventionists, with our coaches, with our classroom teachers, that we're all in that together. I think they start to break down some of those myths that usually come about when it comes to MTSS.
Yeah, such a great point. Having the right people in the room, I see that's one of the biggest mistakes schools make is they don't have all the voices in the room that need to be in there.
Right, right,
They'll have only the intervention teachers
right,
or maybe intervention and special ed, but they don't have the regular ed teachers
right.
in there. I see that all the time. So it's such a good point that the right people need to be in the room to have those
Absolutely.
deep conversations and really go to the analysis part, not just
Right,
looking at the data,
right.
actually doing something with it. So let's kind of talk now about those core components. This
Mhm.
is something as a consultant I get asked a lot about. What do
Right.
you feel are truly the essential components of a strong MTSS framework or system that every school should have in place?
Sure. I think it kind of goes back to what you just said. That strong tier one. I think the most important people in the room when it comes to MTSS are our general education classroom
I
teachers.
agree. Yep.
Having that understanding of how important that core role is, because really, I remember when I was an interventionist and I would say, I need my general ed teacher to push me out of a job, essentially, right?
Right.
Because we have such
Right.
strong core that all you really need is maybe some extra additional push in support, to help with small groups as far as classroom management is concerned, or to hit specific skills. I think that's really something that MTS sets us up for success for, is really to have that strong tier one instruction and understanding how our data can help us support that. Also, I think progress monitoring and the way we look at the purpose of assessments is also a critical role of MTSS. And really, it sets that up for such success in thinking that, we start with one universal screener where we're taking a look at where students are as learners overall. And then from there, we can start to kind of sift out and filter those kiddos who really need that extra tug or that extra support, especially when it comes to just maybe some prerequisite skills that they did not receive or did not
Yeah.
master prior to moving on to that next school year. So understanding that once we have that universal screener, now we have some extra diagnostics that we can do that are really easy for teachers to utilize and really easy to understand and really provide a strong line of where to start, what to do if things aren't progressing the way you want to, and then that progress monitoring of constantly, whether it be formal or informal, checking in with our students to make sure that they're closing the gaps that they have in those prerequisite skills. And so sometimes it just really takes someone to explain it in a way that teachers can make sense of it. And that's
Right.
different for every teacher, right? But I think it does take a special leader to be able to explain, okay, here's what the data says. So this is what it means to me. What does that mean to you? And how is that going to impact that instruction that you're going to implement? And really that comes out of, again, that collaborative problem solving that we talked about, that MTSS is really set up for.
Yes. And thank you. I love the fact that you pointed out the key role of leadership. They must be involved in that. It's so critically
Yeah,
important that they're in the room leading those discussions.
absolutely.
So let's go a little deeper, though, with the role of the classroom teacher,
Mhm.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about teacher ownership, because if schools are hesitant about this is often where they say they have a tough time having
Yeah.
teachers own their data. So, one of the most important ideas in MTSS is that teachers actually own their
Yeah.
students' data.
But what does that
So,
mean?
right. So, I mean, you hear that phrase all the
Right.
time, but I want us to break it down and really talk about it. What does
Right.
that actually mean? And what does it
Yeah.
look like in practice? Not just a phrase, oh, own your data. What does
Sure.
it actually look like in practice?
I think some of the most important pieces about owning your data is really just saying, I know the story of my kid's learning, right?
Oh,
So
great. Yeah.
if I have a kiddo who is coming in and I notice that they are struggling with some comprehension skills, I know to go back and look at, okay, well, where are they at with their decoding and blending skills? And if there's still an issue, going back and looking where are they at with their letter sound recognition. And so just knowing that I can analyze the data in a very easy way by just, relying on that predictable progression of skills, and really taking a look at, um, do I know what to do next? When I own my data, when I own my student stories, I can use the numbers that I have, right? But I also know them as kids. I also know them as
Right.
learners. I also know that sometimes a test isn't going to give me the full picture, and that I when I sit down in an MTSS meeting, I know my kiddos the best. That's how I own the data. I also know that the choices that I make based off of my skill set are going to impact that data as well. So I need to know that I am seeking out advice, or whether that be from my fellow teachers or some other literacy experts or the professional learning that I've gone to or been provided with, that I can really take a holistic picture and know my students' stories as learners.
Love that. And the fact, just honestly, the fact that we as teachers will be willing to seek it out
Right.
and to say, oh, okay, well, if your scores are higher, Angie, in your room, if your scores are higher,
Yeah.
what did you do? That's when I saw as a leader that it was
Mm-hmm.
clicking, is
Right.
when people could say that, when they
Right.
were like, oh, wait a minute, what did you do? What did you do? So then they could go back and do that in their
Right.
room as well.
And I think that's what you just said is the basis for MTSS. It's a collaborative problem solving process
Yeah,
too, right? So I might have a skill set here, but I know that you have a skill set here, and how can we collaborate? And how can what you're doing in your room, how can I make that work for my teaching style and my kiddos too? So it's not a competition between whose numbers
right.
are better or whatever. It's a collaboration to say, this really, I have a kiddo who is learning similarly to yours, and this is how I was able to help them. Maybe you can try this, or vice versa. So I think those are other great pieces of MTSS as well. But like you said, that's also part of learning and growing as your teacher. Teachers are automatic lifelong learners. They want to add to their skill set, and so by knowing your kids' stories, you can then add to other teacher skill sets, and they can add to yours.
Yes. And everyone learns together and grows
Yes.
together. I love that. Yes. We used to say all the time that our meetings, and when I lead them now as a consultant, this is a problem solving session.
Yeah.
That's what we're coming. It's all heads together, all hands on deck.
Right.
We're all coming here to identify the problem so that we can all walk out of this room with a plan.
Absolutely.
So, um, responsive instruction. Okay. Just throw
Yeah.
that term out there, responsive instruction. How can teachers ask themselves the question when they're in the meeting, and especially then after they leave? Am I being
Yeah.
responsive to my students' needs, because in MTSS, what I hear you're saying is that's honestly the goal, is for us to respond to the
Right.
data. So how
Right.
can teachers ask themselves that, am I being responsive to my students'
Mhm.
needs? And what does that responsiveness look like in the classroom?
Sure. I think a lot of teachers, when we are responsive to our students, we're able to explain what we're seeing in a way that makes sense. We're able to identify those needs. We're able to state, this is what I've tried to help make connections for that student. This is where I still need support because I've tried A, B, and C, and that's the extent of what I know. Taking what my students are showing me in person and combining that with what the data is showing me, being understanding of, okay, this is this, I know that they are struggling with skills A, B, and C. I'm going to choose one of these skills that I think I can be the most impactful with, and then
Yeah,
figure out what my next steps are. And so I think when we're being responsive to our students, we're constantly analyzing, and that's where the hard part is, right? From especially in our
right.
tier ones, our
Yeah,
teachers, that's the hard part, is that we are constantly analyzing where our kiddos are as readers and then responding to that. If they're struggling with a specific sound spelling, we are going to respond with more practice and repetitive opportunities for repetitive practice with that sound spelling or with that skill set. So knowing what the student is giving you and then knowing what next steps are, but also knowing, if I don't know what the next steps are, I have a um, expert group in my MTSS team to be able
yes.
to go to and get strategies and things to try back in our rooms.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
I think too, often teachers feel overwhelmed by the data in the meetings. They often are overwhelmed with, okay, I've collected it. Kind of,
Now
now
what?
what? Yeah, now
Mm-hmm.
what? Now what do I
Yeah.
do? Now what do I do with it? I've
Right.
been to the meeting, but now what? What advice would you give teachers about using the data in a practical way that would actually improve instruction?
I think the number one thing when we're analyzing data is noticing patterns.
Oh,
So,
good. Yep.
where I think of, where in the skill set is my student struggling the most, because we know that they have to stack on top of each other. Not only that with the skill set, but at what level. So I always go back to foundational skills because that's my wheelhouse, and that's what I'm able to build the most capacity in teachers for. So I know that students are struggling in reading a connected text. So I need to go back and see, can they do this on the simple sentence level? Where
Right.
is that blending, where the skill of blending, where are they struggling? If they're struggling with phrasing, okay, great. Now I know how to be responsive to that, and they need more repetition with their fluency phrasing. Or if I'm seeing, okay, now I need to, they're actually struggling on the word level. Okay, now I need to do some kind of noticing of patterns when they are blending words. Is it specific sound spellings? Is it the blending process as a whole? Just kind of really responding to what is working for them and what isn't, and then how am I providing lots of repetitive practice for
Yeah.
them to kind of make it stick. Because outside of motivation and engagement, that orthographic mapping process is really difficult for a lot of kiddos, and so how can I help them just get over that little bump to make it stick. And I think when we're looking at data, that's the numbers that help us figure out where
Yeah.
in that process that they are struggling the most with. And then, when we're looking at our kids in front of us, that's where we can really figure out what strategies that they need more support with.
When I was a building principal, we did a case study
Mm.
with all of you at Zaner Blozer. It's one of the times I met you. And so that was early in our relationship, but I remember so many times, as you said that, it came back to me. So many times it was just simply those struggling students, the lowest in tier three, those students just had not had enough repetitions to get it. It was just, how
That's
can
the
we get them more repetitions in tier one? in the
Hmm.
universe, in whole group time, in small group time, and then that extra layer of support
Right.
in the tier two or tier three. So how can we build in those repetitions to really make
Absolutely.
sure that they are getting it? Yeah, great point.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between the tiers, right? So in
Right.
tier one, in whole group, they're getting the enough repetitions in your general ed classroom. They're getting what they need right there. When we move to tier one plus or tier two, they need additional repetitions and it needs to be more targeted. And then we can really simply look at how many kiddos are in that group, how much time that we're
Yeah.
providing them with that practice. And then, if that's still not enough, then we need to get down to the nitty gritty and find out where those miscues are happening and then
Yes.
really target in there and then give repetition to those miscues. And so I think sometimes we make it a bigger issue than it is. And the more that we can analyze and utilize that data to really hone in on those skills that they're missing, we feel success as teachers, at which students feed off of, and then they feel success as readers.
And it's empowering to the teachers
For
to know that
sure.
you've closed
That's why we
that
do what we do.
gap. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. That's why we come each day. Yeah.
That's right.
Come to work
That's
each
right. It's
day.
that
Yeah.
spark. It's that dopamine hit of seeing a kid get it
Yes.
that keeps us
Yes.
going. It absolutely is.
So we've already mentioned it, but I mean, it's not just us. You often hear tier one instruction's the most important tier. I love to call it universal instruction because that's the
Yeah.
instruction for everybody. Why, in your opinion, though, is strong core instruction truly the foundation of an effective MTSS system? Because you kind of started off by talking about that.
Yeah.
You led with that.
I did lead with that. I'm
You
kind of
did.
passionate about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also has to do with my current role, working with a program that really benefits that tier one instruction so well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think when I think about tier one, I'm thinking about, especially if we start strong in kindergarten and we're really like, even just in our basic skill sets of word work, right? If we start strong in kindergarten with teaching explicit systematic instruction and teaching those very simple sound spelling, just the basic consonants and vowels, and then working our way up as students, cumulatively add to their skill sets. Really focused on providing that explicit steps over and over again, and really instructional routines during a whole group
Oh, man.
really make
Yes.
huge impact. They
Yeah.
really do, and I think that I have taught in classrooms. I personally have taught in classrooms that I haven't had instructional routines and ones that I have, and the difference is really it's overwhelming. And
Yeah.
then, you learn little classroom management tips along the way to make sure that your whole group is really impacted. And then provide them, more small group opportunities to practice and apply in those connected texts. But if we don't give them those really strong, explicit instructional routines as the baseline, it's really hard to catch up later on when they've missed out on those prerequisite skills. And then you have a lot of kids who are now needing more focused, targeted small group instruction, when maybe if we would have had that explicit,
Yep.
systematic instruction from the beginning, we would, eliminate the need for as many kiddos in that targeted practice. And then that also allows us, for those kiddos who actually do need tier two, we don't have 4 or 5 groups at 15
Right.
a pop trying to fit that all into our ELA block among the million and other things that our elementary classrooms are having to do all day. So if we can get it right at the beginning with, again, building
Yes.
that foundation, then when we do have to give that additional support, it's not as overwhelming for classroom teachers.
I need an applause button.
Uh,
I keep saying that. I keep saying to Gretchen, I need an applause button. We need applause right there. Yes. And you said to
yeah,
reduce the need for intervention. That's what strong universal instruction does.
right.
I don't think I have gotten to talk to you yet since there's a school that you and I are both servicing
Hmm.
in Illinois,
Right.
Rockdale, and I just was with them right after their middle of year data team
Yeah.
meeting. Year one with Super Kids. And for the very first time, Angie, No student in kindergarten needs any type of
That's
intervention.
incredible. That's
I mean,
incredible.
so, and the principal and the assistant principal and I were going through it and going, looking at all the data. And then we were going to have our building leadership team meeting and go through it all together as the team. And we were talking about the power then. Think about the
Yeah.
power long term when that group of students roll into first grade and then when those
Oh,
students
yeah.
roll into second grade. And that was what we saw as a
Yeah.
building principal. Even through the years of COVID, our second graders, by the time they had had Super Kids kindergarten, first and second, every child was reading at the 50th percentile or higher.
Yeah.
And then they went into third grade. No one needed intervention. And
That
it's
it's
such,
incredible. It gives me
it is.
goosebumps.
Oh, I know.
It
Just
it does.
improve. Yeah, go ahead.
And I think what you said there is that we caught it, we did it early on. And that is also the goal of MTSS, right? Is to
Yeah,
really be proactive about the instruction that we're providing our students. And if we can start off with great tools like a high quality instructional materials, we hear that all the time, but it's not just a misnomer. It really is. If we can use really great tools that allow teachers to be flexible, in and responsive, giving them that baseline foundation of the tool. And then I use my art as a teacher to really
yes,
understand the needs of my students. And if I need to differentiate here, because I can tell right away the majority of my students need a little bit more practice with this skill, I can. Um, you know, we talk about fidelity to the programs a lot, and I hate that it's gotten this bad rep of fidelity
I
means
do
read
too.
script. I hate that so
It's
much
gotten a
because that's
bad
not
rap.
what good, yeah, that's not
Yeah,
what good curriculum is. Great curriculum, when we say fidelity, we mean follow the scope and sequence, don't bring outside resources, and really take the time to read the instructional integrity of the program. It's integrated for a reason. It's built for a reason. Now, if you have a great program, obviously,
right.
it's integrated in the program. So it's just like I think about when you have a brand new recipe, you follow it to the T that very first time you make it, right? You don't
Right.
add your extra spices in or anything because you don't know what it's going to taste like. And so
Right.
once you get really good with a good tier one instructional practices, and your curriculum is aligned with its scientifically based reading research, you can really get into then adding your spices once you know the integrity of the program, and you can follow it with fidelity because you know the places that you can differentiate a little bit and the places that program's got it. I don't have to touch it. And so
Right.
sometimes having great leaders who know
Yes.
the insides and outs of what a good program looks like, they can help our teachers get that professional learning pieces to be able to implement that with, again, fidelity, but
Yeah.
in a way that it is in partnership with the art of teaching.
Sure. And through collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, when we think about the instructional practices that are needed in the classroom, what are the evidence-based instructional practices do you believe that we should see consistently on a
Right.
regular basis in our tier one classrooms?
Well, I mean, you and I are both huge proponents of explicit instruction.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's one of our favorite
it is
topics.
one of our favorite things. I talk about every time I do a professional learning, I always tell the same story. I remember the very first year I started teaching my little first graders, and it was like day 2. And I was, the big teacher, and I was so excited to have my own classroom. And I remember it was time to go to lunch. And I said to my first graders, okay, line up. And we all know what happens when we tell a room full of 6-year-olds to do something with no instruction whatsoever. Pure
Right.
chaos, right? Herding cat. And so I
Yeah.
think that was my first understanding of the importance of explicit instruction. I need to really go through all of my expectations for what that looks like, so that I can make sure that students understand I'm holding them to this accountability level. And these are the things that you need to do to be successful in my classroom, in my school. I mean, the same can be said about instruction when it comes to literacy instruction. I can't just put a book in front of a kiddo and say, okay, go for it. Maybe you have it, maybe you don't. I really need to make sure that even if I think they have it, that they can express it themselves, that I've given them enough explicit instruction that I've almost taught their little brains on what to do. every step of the way through think alouds, through modeling, through tons and tons of practice. I think those are some key moments just to remember that we can't leave things up to chance when it comes to our
We
literacy
cannot.
instruction, right?
So well said. Yeah.
So I think that's the number one practice that I think about. I also think about the importance of read alouds, and I'm so very thankful and glad that we have so many thought leaders out right now that are shining the light on that. Every, I loved being read to as a kid. My favorite part about being in the classrooms was reading aloud, but also understanding the instructional purpose behind a read aloud.
Yes. Yeah.
That I'm providing rich oral language and vocabulary that kids aren't normally going to come across, especially, when their faces are in technology all the time. Giving them the love of what great language sounds like and what great vocabulary sounds like. I think it's really important, especially in a primary classroom. And then again, like I said earlier, the plenty of opportunities for practice, that repetitive practice. Even if I think I got it, now I'm going to throw a new word at you. Let's see if you can transfer that skill to that new word. And if you can't, then we need more repetitive practice till it becomes natural. And I think one of my favorite parts about even watching the difference between the beginning of the school year and then after January, when those little light bulbs start clicking, and you have nobody has any idea how it happens because it happens so differently for each kiddo. But just seeing that spark, like, oh my gosh, we were beating our heads against the wall for the first semester, and now they get it. They can pick up any book and read it, and it's wonderful to see. And it's because teachers really provided that environment of learning and accountability. They've set that bar high, and every kid can do it. We never say my kids can't do that. That is
right.
That is such a trigger for me because every kid can do it. It's my job as the teacher to scaffold that with that explicit systematic instruction. I think those are key points to every literacy classroom.
Angie, I loved how you brought up read alouds because I feel like that's something that's kind of been tossed aside. And it was my favorite part of my day as a classroom teacher because that's when you could go deep into, like you said, oral language and then applying everything that we had done in the reading blog. Could they apply it? Could they apply those skills, those strategies to that new piece of text? We were always reading things too that were above grade level, reading to them. But that's really how we're both friends with Molly Ness. That's really how my relationship with Molly blossomed, is because I had always just loved read alouds. And when I found out there's this person out here who's researching this and writing about it, I mean, we just immediately became the best of friends because it is such a critically important piece right now. And it's got so much power.
I love how she shines a light on a very simple routine of thinking aloud as they read. A lot, especially that rich oral language of, I'm wondering about this. The author said this, and I'm wondering about this. She's telling her students what her brain is thinking as she's reading, as a model for what their brain should be thinking. And I love that approach to the read aloud. So it's intentional read aloud. It doesn't feel like, it's also entertaining and it's also exciting because you get the opportunity as a teacher to make different voices and be really excited with your fluency, but it's also intentional to help mold and model what their little brain should be thinking while they're reading, when they're independently reading or silently reading.
And so strategic too about which questions are you going to ask and what are you going to bring out about that text. And and I loved it. And I felt there was so much creativity possible there for the teachers.
Absolutely.
So let's transition. Thanks for all of that. That was excellent. Let's transition now to small group. And again, let me pause here because, man, this has become controversial and I don't understand it, but it has. There are people saying no one needs small group. There are people saying that you only teach in small group, get rid of whole group. There are folks saying no, whole group all day long. All right, so let's dive in, Angie, and let's break this down. Let's go. Small group instruction. How should teachers think about small group instruction within the MTSS framework?
Sure. So I think it goes back to, again, that strong tier 1 instruction where we're really doing strong instructional routines as a whole group, so that the majority of our kiddos are responding to that. That gives them enough practice that they need. It While I understand some of the research behind whole group only, I get that, what are our kids doing when I'm with my group and the other children are by themselves? And what does that loss of learning look like and things like that? I get that. I have a hard time picturing that in reality, especially with our teachers who may be the only ones in the classroom. Right. So it's ideal that you could have, push in support. So you're doing, instead of your students going to an independent center, they're actually seeing another certified teacher who's helping them with a specific skill that they need. That would be an ideal world. But I also know that there are so many of our students who aren't getting what they need at tier 1 right now for a myriad of reasons. And it could be because we don't have a great tier 1 instruction. So we're having to pull as we can in small group. I think one of the things when it comes to small group is that we have to really be cognizant of who gets it, how many are in that group, the frequency in which we're seeing them, and what we're doing within that small group. So we talk about our kiddos who are getting what they need in whole group. Maybe they only need to practice in, these decodable texts or these connected text pieces a couple of days a week, just so that we can double check that they are actually applying and transferring the skills that we've taught them. Where we have other kiddos who that whole group is just not going to be the way that they learn. So we need to pull them into a small group and really provide targeted feedback and lots of structured responses to how they're reading. Providing them the opportunities to blend or walk them through. Let's say they come across a word they don't know as they're reading an entire sentence. We're going to stop right there and we're going to practice reading just that word, practice bringing it all the way down to the phoneme level if we have to. And then we're going to go back and reread the sentence. They just need that constant repetition and someone else's voice out loud telling their brains what to do until we can scaffold that back and they can do it more efficiently on their own. And then we're going to have kiddos who, we're pulling in the small group instruction and we're not even in connected text yet. Right now, all we are working on is phonemic awareness because that is where they are in their skills. And they are still struggling with making that letter sound connection. So we have to really focus on just that phoneme level and just providing them an opportunity to close those prerequisite skills that they don't have in order to reach grade level understanding. So small group, I think we just need a better understanding of who gets the most and who doesn't need the most, who doesn't need as much. Maybe it's more of a check-in. And it's hard. It's a shift in understanding what small group is. When I first started teaching, we went from every child, every day, time is the variable. I still know that was something that was ingrained in us. And I think that what we're noticing from research is that every child doesn't need a small group, but we can use our data to decide who does and what skills they need in that small group. And so I think it's really about, again, that collaborative problem solving and being responsive to the understanding of where our students are as learners.
Really analyzing the data. And like you said earlier, looking at a diagnostic and really spending that time to strategically, intentionally close those gaps.
Right.
But this just brings up a topic that's getting ready to be a future podcast episode on. We feel like we have a common language, but I feel like there is this misunderstanding because even with the letters MTSS, you started out and you and I both feel a great MTSS also includes very strong tier 1. But so often I'll survey teachers and say, when you hear MTSS, what do you think of? And they always say, I always get as an answer, intervention for tier 3. And so when you hear small group instruction, you'll say, what does that mean? And I'll hear so many different things because there are people that did the daily 5, that did, how it was in balanced literacy and kids sitting there silently reading or doing this or that. And so I think we too need to be better
Yeah.
as educators, especially leaders out there,
Right.
um, to really make sure that everyone's got a good understanding of what we are even talking about
Right.
when we say these phrases, MTSS, when we say small group instruction, and really be prepared to model in the classrooms what
Yes.
this looks like.
Right. And sometimes it just takes a structured lesson plan. You
It
know,
does.
sometimes
Yes.
it just means
Preach.
I'm not going to go into my small group and wing it.
Right.
I don't, there are lots of teachers that may feel they have that skill set. I've tried that a million times, even going off of my, years of expertise, but I know the more planned I am, then at least I
Right.
know where my foundation starts, that I can be wing it in response to where my students are. But sometimes that's all a small group needs is just I need to know step 1, step 2, steps 3, step 4, and I'm going to bring my kiddos with me along the way. And then if I notice that they're not picking something up, stop. That's where I need to stop, and that's where that repetition needs to happen. And
Yeah.
then I know what to do tomorrow to help support them because that's where I stopped the day before.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just
Excellent.
something as simple as that.
Targeted plan. Yeah. Wonderful. You've mentioned the word systems a couple times. And again, that's one of our favorite things to talk about. We're going to have to go on vacation sometime together, Angie, so we can
I
just
do have
talk
it.
about all of our topics. Yes. All right. What do you think separates schools that truly implement strong interventions
Mm.
in a systematic fashion from schools that struggle to make intervention effective? Because I know in your work you've seen it. You've seen
Yeah.
that.
Um, I will tell you the best, most cohesive situations that I have seen is when the interventionist or literacy specialist or what have you works with the classroom teacher in a push in situation. Um,
I
I,
agree.
and I'm a big proponent of flex grouping. I think that sometimes we as teachers feel isolated in our classrooms amongst the grades instead of looking at the students as a whole and then deciding, we have 4 certified amazing teachers. What can we do for these kiddos that we can think about using our data holistically supporting all of them? So maybe that is one, we're breaking down, we're putting our students who are ready for more challenge in one classroom, and we're supplying them with an educational assistant, or, a lot of those kiddos are independent. So maybe we're just helping when we're problem solving. How can we continue to challenge and motivate those students? One teacher that is going to work with our on grade level students so that we can continue to push them because we don't want them to be stagnant. No, even if they are reading at grade level, we still don't want them to be stagnant. We want them to
Right.
become independent and curious learners. So
Right.
maybe we're going to ask one of our interventionists or again an educational assistant, and they're going to take a group at the same time that classroom teacher is taking a group. And so now we have 2 certified teachers in the room to really start filling in the gaps and pushing our kiddos. And then maybe we have one teacher that is going to get the most resources, that those students work
Yes.
out a way
Yes.
where that classroom, it has the most struggling students. So our interventionist, our coach, and anybody that we can pull, to be a part of our rotation. So those kiddos are never doing anything independent because they're just not ready for it. And then we break down all the skills, and one teacher is teaching just sound spellings. One teacher is teaching just encoding and dictation, and one teacher is just working in a connected text. And we're having them, circulate through there. I've seen the last building that when I was in an actual district, the last building that I was at, that's how we ran things. And we saw huge gains in our students because not only were the kiddos getting the resources that they need, but the collaboration through that
Yeah.
MTSS process was on point. Everybody knew all of the kids. They could all share their perspective coming from their own skill set, and it really it was a systems approach. And then
Yeah.
we were all on the same page when we said, okay, this kiddo may have something else going on that we need to diagnose. And we had 4 or 5 certified teachers able to present reasonings and thinking for that on top of the data as well. So it really is, the more cohesive we can be in the implementation of what we learn from our MTSS, I think is really the most impactful for our kiddos too.
I love what you said there. I say all the time, I know you know this, but I say all means all exclamation mark. It, all, that they're all our students and they're
Yeah.
our students, and when we
Right.
look at that, when we look at it, even in a data meeting, they're all our students. So what are we going to do for the
Right.
needs of all of them? You've also mentioned in the podcast, but I also know just about you and from the work you've done, how important that you feel leadership is. So
Yeah.
I want to switch and ask you some questions now about leadership, or not even ask questions, just talk about it for a bit. What role do you think that principals and
Mhm.
instructional leaders play in making MTSS systems successful? Because I know about you that you and I have that strong belief in instructional leadership, that those
Right.
are the types of principals that we need.
Most impact. Yeah, they make the most
Yeah.
impact because, again, thinking about being proactive, right? If our instruction is sound, if our teachers feel supported and empowered to make decisions based off of the data, but also what they know about their students, and they feel like they live in a collaborative environment, and it's okay to say, I don't know, or I can ask for
Right.
help. I think that is what a true instructional leader does, is that provides that environment where teachers feel trusted and empowered to ask for help, but also that they're validated in knowing what they're doing in the classroom. And then all of the other pieces of leadership just kind of lock into place. When we have
Yeah.
strong instructional leadership with students who are motivated and engaged to learn, the behaviors really dissipate. I mean, then you have those kiddos who really do struggle behaviorally, and so it doesn't feel like a whole classroom. It feels like a handful, and that's
Right.
so much easier for a principal to handle. Um, when I think about even in the other content areas, to me, literacy is the key to all content areas. So if I can be an instructional leader in knowing what best practices look like, what the reading research is telling me, but also I also know as an instructional leader how to communicate that effectively and set up that environment of learning and curiosity amongst my teachers too. That again, a lot of the management issues that come with being a principal kind of lessen a little bit because
So
we're
true.
really focused on setting up an environment of learning, which is why we're in school.
Right. Yes. Beautiful. You mentioned culture, so I want to
Yeah.
hone in on that for a little bit. How can school leaders build a culture? Because man, it's critically important. How can they build that culture where teachers feel empowered? Because you and we know, I know that's our dream and our goal. So how can they build that culture where teachers truly feel empowered to continuously adjust their instruction based on student needs and feel that it's okay, like what you were just
Right.
talking about? So,
I,
how can
I
the
think
leaders do that?
I think accountability is a very important one. That hits home with a lot of teachers, that if they feel like they're doing more of the work than maybe another teacher is, that whether that's in reality or not, and that's
Right.
that emotion or that feeling comes up. I think that's important, that that the instructional leader really sets a tone that we're all in this together and we're all going to hit high expectations because that's what our kids deserve. And so I think that's a big piece. I also think that building a culture of not no one it everybody is an expert at their own skill, right?
Yeah.
And then really knowing your teachers. So I know, Angie has this specific skill set, and Angie, the other Angie, has this other specific skill set, and how can I bring them together so that they can make magic happen, right? So it's also getting to know your teachers and know what they're really good at, and then shining a light on that, to say, oh, you're struggling with this particular piece of your instruction or this particular piece of your classroom. I'm going to set up a situation where you can go and observe another
Yes.
teacher doing that, so that you can really get those tips and tricks and have that collaborative problem solving process. providing that time, providing that opportunity to your teachers, listening to really what the professional learning that they need is based off of what you're seeing in the classroom, not just whatever the newest and latest thing is, but really how you can grow the skill set of your teachers is also a really important factor. Into creating a culture of curiosity and confidence in your teachers as well. So, and then fun. You got to have fun. Teaching is hard. We make a lot of decisions all the time. And so, if your kiddos are having fun in the classroom, that means that the teachers are having fun teaching. And I think that that's also really important, is to remember that we are all in it for the love of learning, but also we love our kids. We love,
Yes.
and most teachers love being around children in a way that is successful for them, but also because they get to kind of be a kid sometimes too when you're teaching. That's why I love teaching first grade, because I got to sit in a tent with 25 first graders reading books under a pretend fireplace, like things
Yeah.
like that. But empowering that and helping them to connect that to the learning as well. That's really a fun, engaging environment that everybody wants to learn in.
When this is done right, and when this is a system,
Right.
everyone does feel good.
They
And
do.
everyone feels empowered. And when you have those data team meetings, you leave them feeling good when
Yeah.
they're done right, when
Yeah.
they're done correctly.
Success feels good to everybody, right?
Yes, yes. And success begets success.
Right.
So one success leads to another, and it becomes then
Mm-hmm.
this true environment of just celebration of what are we getting good at?
Right.
What are we doing really well? And then what's our next focus area to grow
Mhm.
in? But we're all in it together. I've
Absolutely.
even I've even been guilty of singing the High School Musical song. We're all in this together. Yeah. So, just a few final questions because we're about to
Yeah.
wrap up on our time. But
Yeah.
if a school wanted to strengthen their
Mhm.
MTSS system tomorrow, so if they've listened to this and they've heard some things and they're like, this is an area of growth for us, what
Right.
is one action that they could take immediately to implement?
Um, I think that I think that the number one thing is to definitely take a look at the structure of your MTSS that you have in place. So it's not just about what you do in those meetings, but how you structure those meetings. So,
Great point.
looking at, your year-long plan. Okay, so I'm providing an opportunity for us at the very beginning of the year. We're all going to get together and talk about all of our kids based off of that beginning of the year data. And then we're going to meet again, 8 to 10 weeks later, and we're going to look at just those kiddos that need that struggle. And then we're going to come back and look at the middle of the year and what gaps we've closed. And really just having kind of a system where we are providing opportunity for the structure of MTSS, but also making sure that our master schedule affords that opportunity for us to really have that reflection time as well. So
So important.
sometimes it really is just the basics of the logistics. Before I get into the nitty gritty of what we're actually doing in our meetings, is our school environment set up for us to have that opportunity to gather that information and to really analyze that data? Am I providing that to my teachers in a way that makes sense and that they have the opportunity to then respond to and make the changes in their classroom, so that when we come back again, it doesn't feel like just one other meeting. We've actually been
Right.
intentional in between.
Yeah. So important. And that master schedule, I can
So
tell
it's
you
huge,
what,
isn't it?
man, and it either makes or breaks the whole thing.
Yes.
Like, and you brought up a great point earlier, and I hope people caught it. And as we're wrapping up, I want to mention it. You talked about the structure of when we set up the MTSS and when we're setting up intervention. You had said use the people. Is there a grade level or an area that
Hmm.
needs more support?
Right.
And I see people not being willing to do that now as a full-time consultant.
Right.
That's even part of what we write about, that Patty Montgomery and I write about in It's
Yeah.
Possible. It's one of the questions on the protocol for the meetings, is to say, is there one grade level or one classroom that needs more support? So
Right.
therefore, what are we going to do about it? Yeah,
Right.
but the structure is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to kind of start out just like in literacy. We have to build a really strong foundation for us to
Yeah.
grow from.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah.
So I know you spent a lot of years in education. I know you've had a lot of roles, and you have spent your career truly working to improve literacy outcomes for students. I know that's your passion.
This.
What gives you the most hope right
Mm.
now?
I am so encouraged by teachers who are really excited to finally dig down into the why of how we teach literacy. With this big push on the science of reading or scientifically based reading research, now's the time to really take a look at the shift to the implementation piece. We know the research, we know the best practices, but now's the time to shine on what does that look like in reality in our classrooms. And there are so many teachers out there with great strategies and great instructional routines that are opening up their classrooms and sharing
Yeah.
with others. And also providing like a safety net of it's okay if you fail because
Mhm.
we're going to work together to respond to that and grow from it. And so I think what I really love seeing is how excited teachers are really getting about their literacy practices and feeling like they actually have a stake in what's happening in their classrooms. I think that's something that I get really excited and passionate about, is that we have so many great pieces out there and they're available to us, and even more so now than ever with social media and things like that. And so yeah, that gets me really excited that teachers are really excited about teaching literacy and teaching kids to read.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love that. So, Angie, if listeners want to learn more about you, your work, or connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, you can go through LinkedIn at Angela Cammarata. I'm there. Or you can email me directly. I love to problem solve. I love to help teachers kind of work things out. Sometimes it's just processing out loud with other people. I love doing that. So you can email me directly at my last name Cammarata, Cammarata, 01 at gmail.com. So it's kind of long, but that is a direct email that I utilize when I'm doing consulting work. So
And I have used it. And to the listeners, I can tell you she is great at talking through
yeah.
problems. I've connected her with principals and instructional coaches and everything else, and she answers quickly and she will really get in there and problem solve with them. So, Angie, it's been so great to
So
talk to
fun.
you. Thank you for being on here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the amazing work you do too. I wish I could see you more often, but you're just doing incredible things. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun and a blessing. Thank you so much, Angie.
You're welcome. So, Angie, thanks for sharing your insight today. One of the biggest takeaways, honestly, from our conversation that I hope the listeners will take from this is that MTSS is not just merely a framework. It truly
Right.
is a system. And as you also said, it's also to a mindset. It's really how we
Yeah.
think about it. It is about educators continuously asking that question that you brought up. Am I being responsive to the
Yeah.
needs of my students? When schools combine strong tier one instruction, thoughtful use of the data, and a true commitment to meeting students where they are, working in collaboration, that's when real progress becomes possible. So thank you for breaking that down and explaining it to us, because this is the work that will ensure every student has the opportunity to succeed. So I
That.
applaud you for our discussion today. I applaud you for the work you're doing, and thank you. And I do want to close for our listeners. This has been actually a very special episode. My daughter and I, Gretchen, normally close out and say that this has been brought to you by Angela Hanlin and Associates, because all of the other episodes have been. This podcast, though, is special. It has been sponsored today by Zaner Blozer. Zahner Bloser publishes the Super Kids Reading Program, which is a comprehensive English language arts curriculum crafted specifically for K-2 students, how they learn and getting it right in those early years. I've lived it, I have implemented it, and that is so true when they say that. That's not just a line or slogan, but it is the systematic, explicit instructional path that solidifies foundational skills and builds knowledge to grow students' confidence as readers. If you would like to discover whether the Super Kids Comprehensive Program or the Super Kids Family of Resources are a good fit for you and your literacy goals at your school or in your classroom and your instructional approach, then please go visit go.zahnerbloser.com/superkids. I'll say that one more time. That's go.zahner, Zaner dash Bloser. I often hear this one misspelled, BLOSER.com/superkids. It's all lowercase. Thank you, as always, for joining us. And we wish you the best of luck in your literacy journey. And as you go forth and have the strongest impact that you possibly can on your students. Thanks for joining us. Until next time. Bye.